Jack Harper stood at the viewport of the USS Constellation, watching the stars blur as the ship moved through space. He was 28 years old, with brown hair that never stayed combed, and eyes that people said saw too much. As the ship's communications specialist, his job was to understand aliens, not fight them. Yet here he was, 3 days from the biggest fight of his life, of any human's life. Still worried about the translation files? A voice asked from behind him. Jack turned to see Admiral Collins, her gray hair pulled back in its usual tight bun. At 62, she was the oldest person on the ship, and the one who had surprised everyone by choosing Jack as humanity's champion. "No, Admiral, I'm worried about dying in front of the entire galaxy," Jack said. Admiral Collins nodded slowly. "That's fair. But I didn't pick you to die, Harper." "You picked me because no one else volunteered," Jack said. "I picked you because I've read your file. Grew up in Montana with your grandfather after your parents died. He taught you to hunt, track, and survive. You speak 7 Earth languages and now 4 alien ones. You understand people and other beings better than anyone else on this ship." Jack shook his head. "Understanding won't help much when a Krell warrior is trying to tear me apart. Won't it?" Admiral Collins handed him a data pad. "The Galactic Conclave has held these arena matches for thousands of years. They expect us to send soldiers, fighters. But this isn't about fighting. It's about proving our worth as a species." Jack took the pad and looked at the images of past arena champions. Huge creatures with extra limbs, built-in armor, and natural weapons. Humans had none of these things. "We've been in space for less than 50 years, Jack said. "Most of these species have been traveling between stars for thousands. They're stronger, faster, and have technology we barely understand." "True," Admiral Collins said. "But none of them are human." The Admiral left, and Jack spent the night reading everything he could about the Conclave and the arena. The rules were simple but brutal. Each of the 12 competing species would send one champion. They would fight until one yielded or could not continue. Death was not required, but was common. The winning species would gain respect and better trading rights in Conclave space. 3 days later, the USS Constellation docked at the massive space station that housed the Galactic Conclave. Jack stood in his quarters wearing the simple blue uniform of Earth's space fleet. No armor, no weapons. Those would be provided at the arena, though he doubted anything they gave him would fit properly or work well for human hands. A knock came at his door. It was Steve Bennett, the ship's doctor, holding a small case. "Some vitamins and pain blockers," Steve said, handing over the case. "Not much, but it's all they'll let you take in." "Thanks," Jack said, tucking the case into his pocket. "The whole ship is behind you," Steve added. "We'll be watching the feeds, just try to come back in one piece." The shuttle to the arena was small and cramped. Jack was the only passenger, along with 2 Conclave guards who looked like tall insects with 4 arms each. They didn't speak to him during the hour-long journey. When they arrived, Jack was led through cold metal hallways to a small room with a bed, a sink, and a screen on the wall. This would be his home for the duration of the competition. "The opening ceremony begins in 1 hour," one of the guards said in a clicking voice that Jack's translator converted to English. "You will be presented to the Conclave leaders and the other champions." After they left, Jack sat on the bed and tried to calm his racing heart. He wasn't a fighter. He had basic training like everyone in the fleet, but nothing that would prepare him for combat against creatures born and bred for war. An hour later, Jack followed new guards to a massive circular chamber. The walls rose hundreds of feet, with seating for thousands of aliens of all shapes and sizes. In the center was a raised platform where 11 beings already stood in a line. As Jack walked across the sandy floor, whispers and laughs spread through the crowd. He knew what they were saying without needing a translator. The humans had sent a joke, not a champion. A tall blue alien with tentacles where a human would have a mouth stepped forward from a high box. "Welcome, champions, to the 712th Conclave Arena." The alien's voice boomed through the chamber. "Today we welcome a new species to our ancient tradition. The humans have joined our galactic community and now seek to prove They're worth. The alien pointed a long finger at Jack. Human champion, step forward and be recognized. Jack walked to the center of the platform, aware of the massive beings towering over him on all sides. The closest was at least 7 feet, tall with red scales and yellow eyes. Another looked like a bear but with 6 legs and metal plates grafted to its skin. "I am Jack Harper of Earth," he said, his voice sounding small in the huge space. "Why have you come alone, human?" asked the blue alien. "Where are your trainers? Your support team?" Jack hadn't known he could bring others. No one had told him. But he answered as best he could. "Humans face our challenges as they come. I am here to learn as much as to compete." This caused muttering among the crowd. The blue alien seemed surprised. "Very well. The draw for the first matches will now begin." Large screens around the arena lit up, showing the faces and names of all 12 champions. They began to shuffle and then paired off. Jack's face appeared, next to a creature called Graka, a Krell warrior. Jack looked across the platform and found Graka staring at him. The alien was over 8 feet tall with a hard outer shell like a beetle and 2 sets of arms. Its eyes were black and shiny, and what looked like poison barbs grew from its forearms. "The first match will begin tomorrow at dawn," announced the blue alien. "Champions, return to your quarters and prepare." As the others filed out, Graka moved next to Jack. Up close, it smelled like metal and something sweet. "You will die quickly, human," Graka said, its voice rumbling. "I will try to make it painless." Jack looked up at the massive alien. His grandfather had always taught him that fear was natural, but panic was a choice. Right now, Jack felt plenty of fear. "Thank you for your concern," Jack said, meeting those black eyes. "Where I come from, we have a saying. It's not the size of the fighter that matters, but the size of the fight inside them." Graka made a sound that might have been a laugh. "We shall see what is inside you tomorrow, human. Perhaps your organs will be as interesting as your words." That night, Jack barely slept. He used the room screen to study everything available about Krell physiology. They were strong but slow to change direction. Their exoskeleton was tough, but had joints that were vulnerable. The poison barbs were their main weapon, capable of paralyzing most species. Jack had no illusions about winning the whole competition. But perhaps he could survive the first round without embarrassing humanity. That would be victory enough. As the station's artificial dawn began to brighten his room, Jack stood and did the stretches his grandfather had taught him long ago. His body felt alive with fear and something else, curiosity. In a few hours, he would either make history or become a footnote in humanity's brief time among the stars. He was ready to find out which. The arena looked different in the bright lights of competition day. Jack stood in a small holding area, watching through a force field as thousands of aliens filled the seats. The sandy ground had been raked smooth, and various obstacles had been placed around the circular space: rocks, small barriers, and what looked like pools of liquid. A stern-faced alien handed Jack his weapons, a short spear and a curved knife. Both felt wrong in his hands, clearly not made for human grip. The armor they gave him was worse, too heavy in some places, too loose in others. Jack knew it would slow him down more than protect him. 5 minutes until your match, human," the alien said. Jack nodded and set the armor aside. He would wear only his uniform pants and a light shirt. The crowd would see his bare arms and think him even weaker, but Jack needed to move freely. Speed and thinking would be his only advantages against Graka. "You refuse the armor?" The alien seemed surprised. "Yes," Jack said simply. The alien made a noise that might have been a laugh. "Your death wish has been noted." When the signal came, Jack walked out into the arena. The noise hit him like a physical force. Thousands of aliens calling, clicking, howling, and making sounds no human vocal cords could produce. The massive screens above showed his face, looking small and fragile, next to the imposing image of Graka. From the opposite side of the arena, Graka entered. The Krell warrior wore plates of shining metal over its already armored body and carried a massive hammer in its lower arms. The upper arms held what looked like spiked whips. In the center of the arena stood the blue alien from yesterday, the announcer. Today we witness the first match of the 712th Conclave Games. Graka of the Krell Dominion, a champion with 3 previous arena victories, faces the newcomer, Jack Harper of Earth. The crowd roared. Jack saw that most were cheering for Graka. A few watched him with what might have been pity. The match continues until one champion yields or can no longer fight, the announcer continued. Champions, approach the center, Jack walked forward, the spear in one hand and knife in the other. Graka stomped toward him, each step shaking the ground. You should have worn the armor, human, Graka said when they stood before the announcer. Now everyone will see your insides. Jack looked up at the massive alien. You know what they say, the quickest way to someone's heart isn't always through their armor. The announcer raised his arms. Champions, take your positions. Jack backed away to his starting mark. His heart pounded in his chest. He gripped his weapons tightly, though he knew they would do little against Graka's exoskeleton. Begin, shouted the announcer, quickly moving off the field. Graka charged immediately, faster than Jack expected. The ground shook with each heavy step. Jack rolled to the side as the hammer crashed down where he had stood, sending sand flying into the air. The HFY crowd roared with approval. Jack knew they expected him to keep running until Graka caught him. That was what prey did. But Jack wasn't prey. He circled Graka, studying the alien's movements. The hammer was slow to lift after each strike. The whips had good range, but took time to pull back. And most importantly, Graka always led with the right side. Jack feinted left, then darted right when Graka swung. He slashed with his knife at one of the exposed joints in Graka's leg armor. It barely penetrated, but green fluid leaked out. Graka roared, in surprise or pain, Jack couldn't tell. The Krell spun faster than expected, and one whip caught Jack across the back. Pain exploded along his spine. He stumbled forward and barely avoided the hammer that would have crushed him. The crowd grew louder. Jack saw his own blood on the sand now. His back burned where the whip had cut through his shirt. But he remained focused. First blood to me, Graka said. There will be much more. Jack moved again, this time toward one of the obstacles, a rock formation that would limit Graka's swing. The Krell followed, confident and unhurried. As Jack slipped between 2 tall rocks, he noticed something. The rocks weren't natural. They had small seams and what looked like control panels. The obstacles must be programmed, perhaps for different scenarios. An idea formed in Jack's mind. He pressed his back against one rock, ignoring the pain, and waited. When Graka approached, Jack pretended to limp badly. Already weakening, Graka said. Humans are fragile things. The Krell surged forward, swinging the hammer in a powerful arc. At the last second, Jack dropped flat to the ground. The hammer smashed into the rock behind him, and the rock responded. Lights flashed along its surface as built-in defense mechanisms activated. A surge of energy pulsed outward, catching Graka fully in its electrical field. The Krell warrior spasmed, dropping both hammer and whips. Jack didn't waste the opportunity. He darted forward and drove his spear into the same joint he had cut earlier. This time, it sank deep. Graka bellowed in pain and lashed out blindly. One massive arm caught Jack in the chest, sending him flying. He landed hard, the air knocked from his lungs. The spear was gone, still stuck in Graka's leg. The crowd was silent now, watching in surprise as Graka limped forward, green fluid pouring from the wounded joint. Jack struggled to his feet, knife still in hand. His ribs screamed in pain. At least one was broken. He tasted blood in his mouth. Clever, Graka said, voice strained, but not clever enough. The Krell pulled the spear from its leg with a sickening sound and snapped it in half. Then it reached down and picked up its fallen hammer. Jack backed away, looking for another advantage. His eyes fell on one of the pools of liquid. He remembered something from the files. Krell exoskeletons became brittle when exposed to certain acids. It was a desperate gamble, but Jack was running out of options. He backed toward the nearest pool, acting as if he were simply retreating. Graka followed, dragging the injured leg. Nowhere to run, human. When Jack reached the edge of the pool, he stopped. Graka raised the hammer for a final blow. Jack dropped and rolled, not away from Graka, but toward it. He slipped between the Krell's legs and slashed at the back of Vi, the injured knee, with his knife. As Graka roared and turned, Jack rolled clear and circled back to the pool. He cupped his hands and threw liquid from the pool directly at Graka's face. The Krell warrior screamed as the liquid, whatever it was, began to sizzle against its exoskeleton. While Graka clawed at its face, Jack darted in again. This time, he aimed for a point his research had shown was vital, a nerve cluster visible through the joints of the exoskeleton. His knife found its mark. Graka went rigid, then collapsed to the ground with a crash that shook the arena. Jack stood over the fallen Krell, breathing hard. Blood ran down his back, and each breath sent pain through his ribs. But he was still standing. The arena was completely silent. The announcer hurried onto the field, looking between Jack and Graka in shock. After checking the fallen champion, he raised his arms. The winner, Jack Harper of Earth. The silence broke. Some aliens cheered, others made angry noises, but most simply stared in disbelief. Jack could have left then, but instead, he knelt beside Graka. The Krell warrior's eyes were still alert, though its body was paralyzed. The effect will wear off in about an hour, Jack said quietly. I aim to disable, not kill. Graka's eyes fixed on Jack. Why? It managed to ask. Because that's what humans do, Jack said. We fight when we must, but we show respect to worthy opponents. Jack stood and offered a formal bow to Graka, the way he had seen Krell warriors do in the cultural files. Then he turned and walked from the arena. Behind him, for the first time in arena history, the spectators did not call for death. Instead, a strange, respectful silence followed Jack as he limped back to his quarters to prepare for whatever came next. Jack sat on the edge of his bed, wincing as he wrapped bandages around his ribs. The medical supplies provided were basic but effective. His back still stung from the whip cuts, but the healing gel had stopped the bleeding. News of his victory had spread quickly. The screen in his room showed various alien commentators discussing the match. Most seemed shocked. Some questioned whether humans had hidden abilities or technology. None seemed to consider that Jack had simply outsmarted. Graka, a soft knock came at his door. Jack moved carefully to open it, expecting another arena official. Instead, he found a human woman with short blonde hair and blue eyes wearing the uniform of the diplomatic corps. Jack Harper? She asked, glancing nervously down the hallway. I'm Kira Wells, assistant to Ambassador Daniels. Can I come in? Jack stepped aside to let her enter, then closed the door quickly. How did you get in here? I thought humans weren't allowed in the competitor areas. Kira smiled slightly. Let's just say, not all species can tell humans apart, especially if you wear the right uniform and act like you belong. She looked at his bandaged torso. You're hurt. I'll live, Jack said. What are you doing here? Is something wrong? Kira sat on the room's only chair. The ambassador sent me. Your victory has caused quite a stir in the conclave. Some delegates are impressed, others are concerned. Concerned about what? I won fairly. That's just it, Kira said. They expected you to die or yield immediately. The betting pools lost millions of credits. And some of the more traditional species don't like that you showed mercy to Graka. Jack frowned. I wasn't trying to make a statement. I just didn't see the point in killing him when he was already defeated. To them, that's a big statement. Kira pulled out a small data device. The ambassador thinks some of the conclave elders might try to ensure you don't progress further. How? By changing the rules or matching you against a competitor you can't possibly beat. She handed him the device. This has information about your next opponent. His name is Nexus, a Voidborn. Jack activated the device. The screen showed a strange creature that seemed made of darkness with glowing patterns across its surface. What exactly is a Voidborn? They come from the edges of the galaxy where normal physics breaks down. They can manipulate energy fields and predict movement patterns. They're extremely dangerous. Jack scrolled through the information. According to the file, no one had ever beaten a Voidborn in direct combat. Great. There's more, Kira said. We have reason to believe Nexus has been given illegal enhancements, some kind of neural amplifier that increases its abilities. That's against arena rules, isn't it? Can't we report it? Kira shook her head. Without proof, it would just look like humans making excuses. Besides, 3 of the 5 judges are from species allied with the Voidborn. Jack set the device down. So, I'm supposed to fight a creature that can predict my moves and manipulate energy, and it's cheating on top of that? That's about it, Kira said, but the ambassador thinks there might be a way. The neural amplifier has one weakness. It overheats if used continuously. If you could force Nexus to use its abilities constantly for several minutes, the device might fail. And how am I supposed to survive several minutes against something like that? Kira smiled. That's where I come in. I've brought you something. She reached into her pocket and pulled out what looked like a simple metal bracelet. This disrupts prediction algorithms. It won't stop Nexus completely, but it might confuse its abilities enough to give you a chance. Jack took the bracelet. Isn't this cheating too? It's not an enhancement, just a counter to their cheating, and it's untraceable. Jack slipped the bracelet on. It felt cool against his skin. Thanks. But why is the ambassador going to all this trouble? I'm just a communications specialist. Kira's face grew serious. Because what happens in the arena doesn't stay in the arena. The Conclave uses these games to judge which species deserve respect and good trading terms. If humans can show we're more than just weak newcomers, it could change everything for Earth. After Kira left, Jack studied the files on Nexus far into the night. The Voidborn had won 17 consecutive matches in various competitions. Its fighting style was unlike any Jack had seen, flowing like water one moment, striking like lightning the next. And those were matches without illegal enhancements. Morning came too quickly. Jack prepared himself as best he could. His ribs still hurt, but at least he could move without wincing now. He slipped Kira's bracelet under the sleeve of his uniform and headed for the arena. The crowd seemed larger today. Word of the humans' unexpected victory had drawn more spectators. Jack saw creatures of all shapes and sizes filling the seats. On the giant screens, his face appeared next to the swirling darkness that was Nexus. This time, Jack was allowed to choose his weapons. He selected a light shield and a flexible staff. Neither would do much damage, but they might help him defend, long enough for the neural amplifier to overheat. When Jack entered the arena, the crowd grew quiet. The sandy floor had been changed overnight. Now it featured several raised platforms and what looked like energy fields connecting them. Nexus emerged from the opposite entrance. In person, it was even stranger than in the images. Its body seemed to absorb light with patterns of blue and purple energy flowing across its surface. It had no clear head or limbs, just a vaguely humanoid shape that shifted and changed as it moved. The announcer's voice boomed. For the second match, Jack Harper of Earth faces Nexus of the Void Realms. Champions approach the center. Jack walked forward, trying to hide his nervousness. Nexus flowed across the sand, leaving small trails of darkness behind it. I watched your first match, human, Nexus said when they met. Its voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Clever tricks won't save you today. We'll see, Jack replied, keeping his face neutral. The announcer raised his arms. This match will test agility and endurance. The energy fields will intensify every 2 minutes. Contact with them will cause increasing pain. Champions, take your positions. Jack moved to his starting mark. He noticed small nodes around the arena that must control the energy fields. If Nexus could manipulate energy, those fields might become weapons against Jack. Begin, the announcer called. Unlike Graka's direct charge, Nexus simply stood still, its patterns glowing brighter. Jack felt a strange pressure in his mind, like someone trying to read his thoughts. The bracelet on his wrist grew warm. Jack decided to move first. He ran toward the nearest platform and jumped onto it, using his staff for balance. Nexus finally moved, flowing like liquid shadow between 2 energy fields. As it passed near them, the fields bent toward it, then snapped back. Jack kept moving, jumping from platform to platform. He needed to keep Nexus using its abilities constantly. Every time the Voidborn reached for him with tendrils of darkness, Jack dodged or blocked with his shield. 2 minutes passed. The energy fields grew brighter and began to hum. Jack could feel heat radiating from them now. "You cannot keep this up, human," Nexus called. "I see every move before you make it." But Jack noticed something. Each time Nexus predicted his movement, the bracelet warmed against his skin, and the prediction seemed slightly off. Not enough for safety, but enough to keep him alive. 4 minutes in, sweat poured down Jack's face. His ribs screamed with each jump. The energy fields now crackled dangerously, and the air smelled like lightning. Nexus was growing frustrated. Its attacks became more aggressive, less controlled. The glowing patterns on its body pulsed faster. "Stand still and face me," it demanded. 6 minutes. Jack's legs burned with exhaustion. He had been moving constantly, forcing Nexus to chase and predict and manipulate the energy fields. The Voidborn's form seemed less stable now, flickering at the edges. Then Jack saw it. A small device partially visible within Nexus's swirling darkness. The neural amplifier, glowing red with heat. Jack took a risk. He jumped directly toward Nexus, staff extended. The Voidborn reached out with tendrils of darkness that wrapped around the staff. But instead of pulling back, Jack pushed, forward and twisted. The staff made contact with the overheating amplifier. There was a sharp crack, then a flash of light that knocked both of them backward. When Jack's vision cleared, Nexus lay on the sand, its form flickering wildly. The neural amplifier lay beside it, smoking and broken. The crowd erupted in confusion. Some called for the match to be stopped. Others demanded Jack be disqualified for damaging Nexus's natural abilities. The announcer rushed onto the field with several officials. They examined the broken device, then huddled together in urgent discussion. Finally, the announcer turned to the crowd. "The match is awarded to Jack Harper of Earth. Nexus is found to have violated competition rules." As Jack walked from the farm arena amid the chaos, he caught sight of Kira in the stands. She gave him a small nod and a smile, 2 matches down, but Jack knew the next would be even harder. Word was spreading that humans were not to be underestimated. News of the illegal neural amplifier spread quickly through the conclave. Jack became the center of attention, though not always in a good way. Some species saw him as exposing corruption in the arena. Others viewed him as a troublemaker who had embarrassed the powerful Voidborn delegation. Jack's quarters were moved to a more secure area after someone tried to access them during the night. Guards now stood outside his door, for his protection, they said, though Jack wondered if they were also there to watch him. 3 days after the match with Nexus, Jack sat reviewing files for his next opponent. His body was healing, but not fast enough. The cut on his back had become infected and his broken ribs made every breath painful. The arena medical staff had treated him, but Jack suspected they had not used their best medicines. A soft knock came at his door. The guards outside spoke briefly with someone, then Jack heard Kira's voice. When he opened the door, she hurried in with a small bag. "Better medicine," she said, pulling out several containers. "From our ship's doctor, these should help with the infection and the pain." "Thanks," Jack said, taking them gratefully. "I think the arena doctors are under orders to keep me functional but not comfortable." Kira nodded. "That wouldn't surprise me. The conclave elders are split about you. Some find your fighting style interesting. Others think humans are making a mockery of their traditions." "By not killing my opponents?" Jack asked. "Partly that, but mostly because you're winning with your mind instead of strength. That's not how it's usually done here." Jack swallowed one of the pain tablets with water. "So what happens now?" Kira sat down and pulled out her data device. "You've reached the semi-finals. Only 4 champions remain, including you. Your next opponent is a mantid assassin named Zikra. She's never lost a match." The screen showed a creature that looked like a cross between a praying mantis and a human. She stood about 7 feet tall with 4 arms and razor-sharp blades growing from her forearms. Her eyes were compound like an insect's, but her movements in the training video looked almost elegant. The mantids are an ancient species. Kira explained. They value precision and honor above all else. Zikra is considered their greatest living warrior. Jack watched the video with growing concern. Zikra moved faster than seemed possible, her blades slicing through training drones with perfect accuracy. How am I supposed to beat that? That's the thing, Kira said. I don't think you can, at least not in direct combat. But the ambassador has been studying Mantid culture. They have strict codes of honor and conduct. In ancient times, battles could be won through contests of skill or even philosophical debate if both parties agreed. You think Zikra would agree to something like that instead of trying to cut me into pieces? Kira shrugged. It's worth trying. The Mantids respect intelligence and adaptability. They might be impressed that you've gotten this far. After Kira left, Jack spent hours studying Mantid culture and language. Their clicking speech was difficult for humans to pronounce, but he practiced key phrases until his throat was sore. If he couldn't beat Zikra with strength, perhaps he could appeal to her sense of honor. The next day, the arena was packed to capacity. Jack's victories had made him famous, or infamous depending on which species you asked. As he walked out onto the sand, he heard a mixture of cheers and hisses from the crowd. The arena had been changed again. Now it was bare, except for a raised circular platform in the center. No weapons were provided this time. The announcement had stated that champions would use only their natural abilities. Zikra entered from the opposite side. She moved with fluid grace, her blade arms gleaming in the bright lights. Her exoskeleton was deep green with intricate patterns etched into etchy marks of honor among her kind. The announcer called them to the center. For this semi-final match, Jack Harper of Earth faces Zikra of the Mantid Collective. This will be a test of natural combat ability. No weapons, no armor, no outside assistance. Jack looked up at Zikra. Her compound eyes reflected his image, back in multiple facets. He took a deep breath and spoke in the clicking Mantid language he had practiced. Honored Zikra, I greet you with respect and acknowledge your superior skill. Zikra's antennae twitched in surprise. The crowd grew quiet, not expecting the human to speak the ancient Mantid tongue. You speak our language, human, she replied, her voice like dry leaves rustling. Poorly, but with effort. I wish to invoke the right of alternative contest, Jack continued, hoping he had the phrase correct. As permitted by your ancestral codes when facing a superior opponent. The arena fell completely silent. The announcer looked confused, not understanding the exchange. Zikra studied Jack for a long moment, her head tilting slightly. You have studied our ways, she said finally. Few outsiders bothered to learn our customs. What alternative do you propose? Jack had prepared for this, a test of adaptability and understanding. Each of us will demonstrate 3 values core to our species. The judges and crowd will determine which set of values shows more promise for the future. Zikra's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sound Jack recognized as Mantid laughter. Clever human. You cannot win by combat, so you change the nature of combat itself. She turned to the announcer. I accept the human's challenge under the ancient codes. The announcer consulted urgently with officials at the side of the arena. Finally, he returned to the center. The challenge has been accepted. This match will proceed as a demonstration of species values, to be judged by crowd response. The crowd buzzed with confusion and interest. This was unlike any arena match they had seen before. As challenger, you begin, Zikra said to Jack. Jack stepped forward. The first human value I demonstrate is adaptability. He moved to the edge of the platform and picked up a handful of sand. Humans evolved on a planet with countless environments. We learned to use what was available. He poured the sand slowly, from one hand to another, then suddenly threw it into the air. As it fell, he moved through it, letting it coat his skin. We cannot change our bodies like some species, but we change our behavior, our tools, our thinking to match any situation. The crowd watched, not quite understanding, but interested. Zikra stepped forward next. The first Mantid value is precision. She moved to the edge of the platform and with blindingly fast movements began to strike at the air with her blades. Each cut was exactly the same distance and angle as the one before. We do not waste motion or thought. Each action has purpose. When she finished, the pattern she had cut in the air seemed to linger, visible through disturbed dust particles catching the light. Jack demonstrated creativity next, using pieces of his uniform and sand to create a quick model of Earth's solar system, explaining how humans had imagined ways to travel beyond their world long before they had the means to do so. Zikra showed discipline, standing perfectly still in a position that would have been impossible for humans to maintain, explaining how Mantid youth trained for years to master their bodies. For his final demonstration, Jack chose empathy. He spoke of how humans cared for the sick, the weak, and even animals, not out of obligation but out of understanding another's pain or need. "This is why I did not kill my opponents," Jack explained to the crowd. "Not from weakness, but from the strength of knowing there is value in all life." Zikra's final value was honor. She described the complex codes that governed Mantid life and how a warrior would rather die than break them. When both had finished, the arena was quiet. The announcer looked uncertain. This was not the bloody spectacle the crowd had come to. See? But then a strange thing happened. A Krell in the audience stood up. Jack recognized Graka, his first opponent, now recovered. The Krell raised a fist in a gesture of respect toward Jack. Then a Voidborn rose, not Nexus, but another of its kind, and made a similar gesture. Soon, members of various species were standing, acknowledging both competitors. The tide had turned. What began as a desperate attempt to avoid certain death had become something more, a genuine cultural exchange. The announcer looked to the judges, who nodded in agreement. "The match is declared a draw. Both champions advance to the final round." Jack and Zikra left the arena together. She turned to him. "You are unlike any opponent I have faced, human. Your species thinks in ways ours does not." "Is that good or bad?" Jack asked. "It is interesting," Zikra replied. "But be warned, your final opponent will not be impressed by words or values. Drax kills. That is all he does." Jack had heard of Drax, the bioengineered champion who had won the last 2 arena competitions, and tomorrow he would face him in the final match. The night before the final match, Jack could not sleep. He sat on his bed reviewing what little information existed about Drax. The bioengineered champion had been created by the Syndicate, a group of species who specialized in genetic manipulation. Drax had no culture, no code of honor, no values that Jack could appeal to. He had been made for one purpose only: to win in the arena. A soft knock came at his door. Jack opened it to find Kira, her face grim. "Bad news," she said when the door closed behind her. "The Conclave Elders have changed the rules for the final match. It will be to the death. No yielding allowed." Jack felt cold dread settle in his stomach. Can they do that? They're claiming it's traditional for the final match. The ambassador tried to protest, but 3 of the 5 ruling members voted for it. Kira sat heavily on the chair. "I think they're worried about what will happen if you win. A human victory would shift the balance of power in the conclave. I'm not sure winning is something I need to worry about," Jack said. "Have you seen Drax's record? He's killed every opponent he's faced. That's why I'm here." Kira reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device. "This is from Admiral Collins. She said to tell you, remember why we came to the stars." Jack took the device. It was a simple recorder with a single message stored on it. "What does that mean?" "I don't know. But the Admiral seemed to think you would understand when the time came." Kira stood and placed a hand on Jack's shoulder. "The whole ship will be watching tomorrow. Whatever happens, you've already done more than anyone thought possible." After she left, Jack played the message. It contained only Admiral Collins' voice saying the same phrase. "Remember why we came to the stars." Jack thought about humanity's long journey to space travel. They hadn't gone to conquer or to prove their strength. They had gone to learn, to understand, to connect with whatever was out there. Jack slept fitfully. Morning came too soon. The arena was transformed for the final match. The sandy floor was gone, replaced by a hard surface with glowing lines marking a large circle. Around this circle, the seats were packed with aliens of every description. The air felt charged with excitement and tension. When Jack entered, a strange thing happened. Instead of the jeers he had faced in his first match, many in the crowd raised their hands or appendages in gestures of respect. Word had spread about the human who fought with his mind as much as his body. The announcer's voice boomed through the arena. Welcome to the final match of the 712th Conclave Games. Today, Jack Harper of Earth faces the reigning champion, Drax of the Syndicate. From the opposite entrance came Drax. He was humanoid in shape, but taller and broader than any human. His skin was gray and seemed to ripple with muscles underneath. His face had no expression, just cold, black eyes that fixed on Jack like a predator spotting prey. This match will continue until one champion falls, the announcer declared. No yields, no escapes. Champions, select your weapons. A rack of weapons appeared at the edge of the circle. Drax moved immediately to select a pair of curved blades that looked like extensions of his arms. Jack chose a simple staff and shield, similar to what he had used against Nexus. Champions, approach the center. Jack walked forward, his heart pounding. Drax moved with frightening speed and grace for his size. When they stood before the announcer, Jack could feel the cold radiating from Drax's body. Do you have any words before we begin? The announcer asked, following tradition. Drax said nothing, his black eyes never leaving Jack's face. Jack thought of Admiral Collins' message. I came here to represent humanity, he said, loud enough for the nearest spectators to hear. Not just our strength, but our values. I fight because I must, but I don't fight to destroy. The announcer seemed uncomfortable with this response. Very well. Champions, take your positions. Jack and Drax moved to opposite sides of the circle. Jack's hands were steady now, his mind clear. He might not survive this match, but he would show the conclave what humans truly stood for. Begin, shouted the announcer. Drax moved like lightning. One moment he was across the circle. The next he was upon Jack, blades slashing. Jack barely got his shield up in time. The impact sent him sliding backward, his arm numb from the force. Jack used his staff to keep Drax at a distance, but the champion batted it aside like a toy. A blade sliced Jack's shoulder. Pain flared, but Jack rolled away before the second blade could find his throat. The crowd roared. This was the spectacle they had come to see. Blood and death. Jack circled, looking for any weakness in Drax's form. There seemed to be none. Every movement was perfect, every attack precisely aimed at vital points. Jack's shield was already dented and cracked from blocking the powerful blows. 10 minutes into the match, Jack was bleeding from cuts on his shoulder, leg, and face. Drax had not slowed at all. The champion pressed forward relentlessly, his black eyes showing no fatigue, no emotion. Jack's strength was fading. His next block came too slow and Drax's blade cut deep into his side. Jack stumbled and fell to one knee. The crowd grew louder, sensing the end was near. Drax advanced for the killing blow. Jack looked up at the champion, then around at the arena full of creatures watching his death. In that moment, Admiral Collins's words came back to him. Remember why we came to the stars, not to conquer, not to destroy, but to understand and to share. As Drax raised his blades, Jack dropped his weapons and stood straight, facing the champion with empty hands. The crowd fell silent, confused by this strange action. I will not kill you, Jack said clearly, and I will not die hating you. That is not what humans are. Drax hesitated, his blade still raised. Something like confusion crossed his otherwise blank face. Jack continued, speaking not just to Drax but to all the watching species. Humans survived on Earth not because we were the strongest or fastest. We survived because we learned to cooperate, to solve problems together, to see value in diversity. We came to the stars not to prove our worth through death, but to add our voice to the greater community. Drax still had not struck. The arena was completely silent now. You can kill me, Jack said to him, but you cannot kill what I represent. Humanity will continue to reach out, to learn, to grow, We don't need to destroy to prove our strength. Jack stretched out his empty hand toward Drax. There is another way. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, Drax lowered his blades. He looked at Jack's outstretched hand with confusion, as if seeing a gesture he didn't understand but somehow recognized. In the stands, someone stood up. Jack glanced over to see Zikra, the mantid assassin, on her feet. Beside her stood Graka the Krell. Then others began to rise, representatives of species Jack had never even seen before. The announcer rushed onto the field. What is happening? The match must continue. But Drax turned to face the conclave elders, in their high box. For the first time he spoke, his voice deep and rough from disuse. The human has shown another kind of strength, he said. I will not kill without purpose. The lead elder, an ancient being with translucent skin, leaned forward. This is unprecedented. The rules state, the rules, interrupted Zikra from the stands, have been changed before. They can be changed again. The crowd began to call out in support. Species that had been enemies for generations were standing together, united by the simple act of a human choosing peace over victory. The elder sank back in his seat, then slowly nodded. The match is declared complete. Both champions have shown their worth. Jack could hardly believe what was happening. As he stood there, bleeding but alive, Drax turned to him and did something no one expected. He bowed. Not the bow of a servant or the defeated, but the bow of one warrior to another. One by one, the great warriors and champions of the galaxy followed suit. A human had walked into the arena alone, and the monsters bowed in respect. When Jack returned to the USS Constellation 3 days later, Admiral Collins was waiting in the docking bay. Well done, Harper, she said with a slight smile. You remembered. You knew this would happen? Jack asked. Not exactly, but I knew we needed to show the Conclave something they hadn't seen before. She gestured toward a view screen showing a Conclave announcement. They've granted Earth full trading rights and a permanent seat on the Council, all because one human reminded them that strength comes in many forms. Jack looked out at the stars through the bay window. Somewhere out there, species that had seen humans as weak were rethinking everything they thought they knew, and perhaps in time, they would understand why humans had survived on their violent planet, and why they would continue to thrive among the stars. Not because they were the strongest or the most deadly, but because when faced with monsters, they chose to see potential allies instead of enemies.